All right. Well, this will be fun because we're actually in the same state. It's a miracle.
That's right.
David, welcome to the Leaders Who Care series.
Thanks a lot, Mark. It's great to be here.
Yeah, so neighbors, basically, LA, Bay Area. We're still part of the US, I believe, even though my friends in Canada say there's an offer to be made for California to join Canada instead of the other way around, not to get into politics. But anyways, best way to start, David, as always, is if you could briefly introduce yourself, and I always have to put an asterisk, especially for men where when I ask that, they give me their title and their company first, and that's not actually the question. The question is, can you like share like where you're from originally, where you are now, anything you feel comfortable sharing about your family and siblings and kids and stuff, and maybe something you've never told anybody you want to reveal to the world now. That's always interesting when someone comes through with that. But about you a little bit, and then we'll get into the business stuff.
All right, yeah, sounds great, Mark. David Onek, born and raised in Washington, D.C., which is pretty rare to be a native D.C. Person. And I now live in San Francisco. I've lived here since '91 and raised my kids as native San Franciscans. My daughters are 23 and 20, and I live in a neighborhood called Bernal Heights in San Francisco, which is an amazing neighborhood, real sense of community, and family is really the most important thing to me. Along with practice, I have a deep meditation practice and equity, which we'll get into. So that's really what I'm all about. I'm currently the CEO of Silicon Valley Social Venture Fund, SV2, and yeah, excited for the conversation.
Cool. Do you have brothers, sisters?
Oh yeah, I have one brother who is a couple years younger than me. Yes, just spent time. Our families all just got together on the East Coast on Martha's Vineyard off the coast of Massachusetts, and all 10 of us with my parents, the grandparents, the parents, the grandkids. It was fabulous. Just got back from that actually.
That is the most important. It goes super fast. I have an aunt in Montreal, who's like a second mom. She's now 97. Um,
Wow.
Still got her whereabouts about her, so to speak, although it's getting a little bit touch and go. But when she turned 96, she looked at me and said, and she knew the answer logically. She said, Mark, where do 95 years go? And as I said, she understands, she's not delirious, but it's still like, and it hit me like, damn,
Yeah.
that's like something else. And it feels to her like it just went.
Right. Yeah.
So
Appreciate each moment and be present for each moment.
yeah, 100%. So you talk about your family and whatnot. I love to ask people like what you were like as a kid and then a teenager. Did you have the infamous lemonade stand? Were you in sports, music? What were you all about?
Well, growing up in DC, first of all, my dad was worked in government. He worked for the Carter administration, the Clinton administration. Later, when I was older, for Pelosi when she was speaker. Really grew up with a bunch of adults who were there for public service, and really, it's so amazing to think of now when public servants are held in such low regard. But that's really what, I aspired to is people who are really working through government and nonprofits to make the world a better place. So that's the environment I grew up in. But my interest was really to make it to the NBA and be a basketball player. I love basketball. I do to this day. Didn't come close to making it to the NBA, but we're huge Golden State Warriors fans up here. And then our new WNBA team, the Golden State Valkyries, are doing incredibly both as a business proposition as well as on the court, going to one of their games this coming week. And so we're a big basketball family here.
Wow, how tall are you?
Oh, only 5'10". So that was part of the reason that my career was short-lived.
So you're not Spud Webb.
No, I cannot dunk like Spud Webb by any means.
Well, that's good. I wanted to be a pro hockey player, so I know the feeling. Type of thing. Did you play any instruments? Did you anything like that?
No, really did not play instruments. My kids prefer if I don't sing around the house.
I know that feeling too.
Yeah. So not really in my background. Yeah. Some of my kids are very talented singers though. So I don't know. It skipped a generation or something.
Um, Let me go to the, I guess, education wise,
Yep.
I'm interested in, first thing I'm interested in, you went to the Sidwell Friends School, a really cool name. What is that?
So it's a Quaker school in DC. I actually went to public school, Murch Elementary and Deal Junior High for those who are from DC, until ninth grade, which was a great experience. And then went to Sidwell, which was a private school. And I feel like I ended up really getting the best of both worlds. I didn't want to go to Sidwell. I actually wanted to keep going to the local public high school where many of my friends in the neighborhood went, and they did great there. My parents kind of wanted me to move to Sidwell. My younger brother was already there. And it turned out to be great because my best friends in the world are from Sidwell. And so I feel like by going to public school until eighth grade and then Sidwell from ninth to 12th, I got an incredible education, both about life and with academics, and have terrific groups of friends from both those parts of my life.
Yeah, I just caught my attention. I love the name Friends School. So,
Yeah, they're Quaker values that I think I probably didn't appreciate in high school because, we were rebelling against everything that was happening. But I think really do instill the work I do today. And the truth is, folks from high school, in addition to the folks I'm extremely close to, when I just bump into random people from my high school, almost all of them are like wonderful people trying to do great things in the world to have social impact. So to me, that's the most important thing a school can do. So in retrospect, I'm very appreciative for that.
yeah, it's funny you say that. When I first went to high school, there was a referendum or whatnot they were having of should we be forced to wear uniforms or not? And when you're in school, you vote against uniforms. But actually, uniforms are a pretty good idea for so many reasons, right?
Yeah, I would have definitely voted against it in high school. I can tell you that.
I know. Well, that's what we did, and we won. If you want to call that winning, because then you have other issues that come up with that. Then you went to Brown. You got your BA in poli sci, and then a few years later, Stanford for them, and to get your bachelor's, and then your JD after that. Um, what were you envisioning after Brown for the future, and then to go for your JD at that time also?
Yeah, so really, my main thing after Brown was just to move to San Francisco, get involved in some kind of public service, and figure it out from there. And so I feel very lucky that we were able to do that in 1991. My older daughter just graduated a year ago from college, and you can't really move to a city like San Francisco or LA or New York or Boston or DC like without a job and without a place to live. It's just not affordable. Luckily, back then, we could kind of pile into apartments and pay relatively reasonable rent and figure it out from there. And so the summer after freshman year of college, I drove across country with two friends and lived, actually, five of us lived in a studio apartment. It was kind of crazy.
Whoa.
And just fell in love with the Bay Area. And I was just like, I want to move back to San Francisco as soon as I can. So, really, 2 weeks after college graduation, I did that. I moved out and didn't really have much of a plan beyond that. But then, one thing fell into line after another. My first job was with Walden House, what was then called Walden House Adolescent Facility. Now it's called Health Right 360, which is one of the biggest kind of rehabilitation centers throughout the state. And we were working with young people in the juvenile justice system who were dual diagnosis, so they had mental health and substance abuse issues. I was just out of college, so I was really barely older than the young people that I was working with, and it was incredibly eye-opening. And that really helped with the trajectory of the rest of my career. I then worked for a research and policy shop in the juvenile justice area, kind of advocating for the types of alternative to incarceration programs that I worked at directly. And so when I went back to law school, I was very clear that I wanted to do kind of public interest and specifically kind of juvenile justice, criminal justice reform work. And so that really helped me going to law school because I knew exactly why I was going and what I wanted to do. In the late 90s, when I went, was when the first dot-com boom was happening. So everybody, many people, most people were going in that direction. And even though I was very interested in that intellectually, I wasn't kind of distracted by it from following the path that I wanted to be on.
Yeah, and then just get a sense of how did those experiences working with children and juveniles and the ups and downs and impact of criminal justice and whatnot. How did that, if it did at all, impact you mentally, whatever for what you were going to go to next, which we'll get into.
Yeah, tremendously. I mean, I think doing direct service work right out of college is a great idea for anybody because it really gets you connected directly to the communities that you might be trying to help in some kind of policy or advocacy way later in your career. And so to this day, and certainly in the early days, I would think about individual young people I worked with when we were working on a policy to try to think, how would they actually think? What would they think about this? Would this work for them? And coming right out of college, also a relatively sheltered environment. to be basically thrown in with very little training, honestly. And at first, the young people had very like didn't have a lot of respect for me, but I learned to earn their respect and to both be, I think, to be able to mentor them and get through to them in a way that they respected. And that was, I had to learn that on the fly and the hard way. And there were some embarrassing moments at the beginning when they were just like, who is this young guy? We're really not going to listen to him. But I think I also just learned about a lot about poverty. Coming from DC, I was familiar with urban poverty, but this place in California had folks from all over the state, including many from rural areas, and really trying to learn about all the different ways young people were growing up. And then also in terms of racial and ethnic issues, coming from DC, especially back in the 80s when I grew up, it was mainly black and white that people talked about. Coming to California, there were young people of every possible race and ethnicity. It was much more complex than the world I had grown up in DC. And that was very eye-opening for me and very important for me and really understand the complexities of some of the issues we were dealing with around both poverty and around race and ethnicity.
Yeah, that's got to be impactful for sure. I was chatting with somebody actually earlier today, and we were talking about people that have been under influencers and stuff, but also how to make change. And she quoted Nelson Mandela saying, "You have to learn to speak their language, not your language."
Totally.
Um, Kind of sounds like you had to learn to speak their language.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. I have some great stories about that, whether it would be too long to go into here, but that's exactly what you had to learn to. You have to meet people where they are, and it really is a through line to the work we do now, which is about, getting proximate to the communities we're working with and centering the voices of people from the communities that you're trying to serve.
Yeah, it's brilliant. I got some stories of nonprofits I've worked at also where from Senegal to Africa and whatnot, and all types of different things. And you can't just go there and tell them how to do things and stuff. It's just a lesson some businesses even have to learn when they're expanding. So, well, that leads me to I guess almost the present now. And our firm was launched. Fifth Element was launched actually at the UN headquarters about 6.5 years ago on the premise that leaders in their organizations, whether they're for or nonprofit foundations, whatever the organizations, can always do better when they're doing good of some kind. And we focus on talent and leadership combined with impact and using technology as the tool to make those things happen. What drew you from your background to join Silicon Valley Social Venture Fund or SV2 as the CEO, specifically, if you will, but not only in terms of leadership skills for the organization, but also for the leaders of the organizations that you serve?
Yeah, so I joined 5 years ago, and first of all, I'm just so glad I did because it's been a wonderful fit, and I feel very lucky to be leading this amazing organization. Um, and I actually joined in the middle of COVID. It was December 2020. So I really took a leap of faith because other than one person who had been a board member of a place I was formerly the executive director, who was also on the board of SV2, she was the only person I knew in person in the whole organization. And somehow my gut told me to accept the position, even though it was all done virtually, which looking back, that seems kind of crazy. But I really felt it strongly, and I'm glad I followed that intuition. There were a couple of things. One was really wanting to move an organization in direction of equity and using all my past experience on racial justice issues, both in the criminal justice reform system, but also otherwise, to try to really move an organization in that direction. And this was an organization that had taken some steps to begin the process. And in the search process, I was very open about what I wanted to do because if they weren't interested in that, I wasn't going to be interested in the position. So I could just be really clear about what I thought the opportunity was at the organization. The
Hmm.
second thing was, as you can see over my head, SV2, we're a nonprofit that does both grant making and impact investing under one roof, which is very rare. So donor partners, contributors pool their resources with us. We take those resources and give some out in grants to local nonprofits, some impact investing to for-profit social ventures, and then we have an immersive learning component. But that nonprofit and for-profit side under one roof really appealed to me. Having been in nonprofits most of my career, I previously ran the Northern California Innocence Project at Santa Clara Law School, helping get innocent people out of prison. I ran another criminal justice center at Berkeley Law School, and have been in other nonprofits throughout my career. I knew how difficult it could sometimes be to work with foundations and work with high net worth individuals. And so I really wanted to be the funder, the grant maker who is the easiest partner to work with, the most supportive partner, the first call that a nonprofit leader would make if they want advice from someone. And I really feel like that's what we've done. But at the same time, I was also became interested more recently in impact investing, particularly in funding going to underrepresented founders, to founders of color and female founders and LGBTQ founders. When I started to look at the stats of where VC funding was going and what a tiny proportion went to those groups, and obviously talent and work ethic are evenly distributed by race and gender, but the opportunities are not. And so I had studied these disparities and worked on them very, very deeply in the criminal justice system for decades, but I had never just thought about the VC world because it wasn't my world. But of course, any area you look at, you start to see those kinds of disparities. So I became very interested in that and personally started making some small investments in underrepresented founders around 2017 or 2018. It was also very interesting in companies that were formed to have a social or environmental impact, which back in my day would have been nonprofits. But now some folks understanding that, I could actually have a bigger impact if I structured this as a for-profit company.
Right.
And so I was very interested in it, but really was incredibly busy with my day job running nonprofits with my family. Didn't have as much time and effort to put into that as I would have liked. And so SV2 was really an opportunity to bring that part of my life into my day to day as well. And so I'm really glad I did that.
And how does it work? Does an organization come to you because they might need a grant, or they might why and how do they come to you?
Yeah, it's a great question. Our grant making process is we pick two topics a year where we just are doing the topic of immigration, very, very timely. Some recent topics we've done are mental health and well-being, also very timely, education equity, climate justice. So we pick two topics a year, and then we dive really deeply into that topic. Our donor partners, we call our contributors donor partners because they're a community that is very involved in what we do. There are some people who just like write us a check every year, just like they write a check to say the food bank because they believe in what we're doing. But most people are joining because they want to roll up their sleeves and be part of this community. And one opportunity they have to do that is through our grant making. So we pick these two topics. We really develop expertise in those topics. We bring in experts to learn from and with. And then we put out a call for nonprofits who are in these areas to nominate themselves or nominate others. Very short nomination form. We don't want them to do much work. We just want to get their name. And so we can then research them. And then our donor partners work with our staff and some of our grantee partners actually to research all the organizations that come in. We narrow it down to 5 finalists. Those 5, we give a stipend for their time and say, would you like to be part of a process where ultimately we'll choose 2 of you for 3-year unrestricted grants. And then we really delve in deeply on those 5, learn a lot about them. We still don't have a written application, for example. We do what we call a coffee chat, which is a much more relational way to get that information from an executive director. This gets back to me wanting to be, again, the most nonprofit friendly funder we can be so that they're spending their time making a difference in the world, not filling out forms for us.
I love that. Yeah, that's so awesome. It's so many times bureaucracy, to use the overgeneral term, gets in the way of somebody being able to just be successful at what they're doing, because you get frustrated and all that. Can you do then for-profits come to you as well, or do you sometimes advise the nonprofit to even have a for-profit as well?
Well, yeah, it's a similar process in that, but instead of having 2 grant rounds a year with impact investing, we have 1 pitch meeting a month where 2 companies pitch. These are companies that are at the seed or pre-seed stage very early and have some type of social or environmental impact they're working towards. And we really emphasize looking for founders, founders of color, female founders, LGBTQ founders, not exclusively, but we really prioritize that given that most VCs are not looking for that.
Sure.
And the numbers show that very clearly. So we have a pitch meeting. We get people can submit all month. We have a team that picks the best two pitches, and then we have a Zoom meeting. And it's cool that it's on Zoom so that a founder all over the country, they don't have to fly in for a 30-minute pitch that might not go anywhere. And it's also helpful for our donor partners who don't have to come in person either. So we do them on Zoom, and any one of our donor partners can come and just be a fly on the wall and learn about the process for those who haven't done impact investing before. But they can also, if they want, be involved in the diligence for companies we move forward with. And we usually have a diligence team of 6 or 7 people, 2 or 3 very experienced investors, maybe 2 or 3 who are brand new to the process and are learning for the first time. We're really one of the only places I'm aware of that hands-on from beginning to end can teach you how to do angel investing in the impact space in a way that you could then go do it yourself, with your own funds. And so that's what we're really encouraging people to do. Ultimately, when we invest, and this is the same with our nonprofits, I should have mentioned, each nonprofit executive director or for-profit founder gets 1 or 2 of our donor partners to serve as what we call a partner champion, which is like a mentor or advisor coach to the leader of that organization. And so in addition to the funds we're providing, and sometimes more importantly, is this kind of beyond the dollar support that we provide. And like in the nonprofit space, one of our nonprofit executive directors said, I love our partner champion. That's what we call this role. They're like a board member, but they're not my boss. So I can really go to them when I'm freaked out about something without feeling that they're not going to trust my leadership, because these are the folks who, do my annual review and everything. And especially for leaders who do not have a built-in network of support outside of their formal organization, we really try to provide that kind of support on both the for-profit and the nonprofit side for them.
Yeah, I know some CEOs who tell me that. I wish I could find a board of directors that aren't my boss.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I'm sure you mentor a lot of entrepreneurs in just that way, what I know about you, Mark. And so that's the kind of relationships we're trying to build.
yeah, and that's what should have the board or advisory board or whatever should be there to help the CEO succeed and the organization to succeed,
That's right.
and not try to say like I can do a better job in that position and all sorts of stuff like that. Do you do the champions, the mentors, the investors, the donors, do they come sometimes with specific interests of sectors or whatnot, or they play overall?
Yeah, it's a great question. Every pairing is unique, and one of the equity changes we made, and then I should actually talk about the biggest equity change we made. But one of the changes we made is we used to just kind of say like, okay, here's this new nonprofit we're funding. Who wants to work with them? And whoever raised their hand, we'd kind of be like, go work with that nonprofit. Now we flipped it, and we let the executive director of the nonprofit choose who they want to work with at SV2. So we might have 5, 6, 7 people who have expressed possible interest. We send their names and LinkedIn bios to the executive director. They can research them. They can do their own interview process if they want. And then they figure out what are the skills we're looking for, what is the personality match we need. And then they come to us and say, this is who we want to work with. And of course, as you can imagine, the matches are so much stronger when we do that. And the organizations really appreciate the agency. But before I go further, I really want to just mention the equity changes we've made in our own board, because that underpins all the other changes we've made that we're talking about. And
Hmm.
so when I came in 5 years ago, we did a big strategic plan that centered us on equity. We really talked about changing the power dynamics in philanthropy and sharing power. And where is power on a nonprofit? It's on the board. So I really wanted to practice what we preach and look at our own board. 10 years ago, so 5 years before I came on board, our board was 100% white. And when I came in 5 years ago, that had changed some, but not that much. Now, 5 years later, as people have turned off the board and I've been able to appoint amazing new board members, our board is now 76% people of color, 88% female. So that is very
Wow.
rare in the grant making space. But even with those changes, I realized we didn't have socioeconomic diversity because everybody was still a donor partner to SV2 who was on the board. And our donor partners give a minimum of $6,000 a year. Many people on our board give much more than that. And so I just knew there were some voices that still weren't at the table. So 3 years ago, I pushed to add 3 of our nonprofit executive directors to our board. And that has been a total game changer for us. That's probably the most important change we've made in the last 5 years. A year later, we added a fourth. So now we have 4 community board members. These are folks who ran nonprofits that had received 3-year grants from us. So they were very used to working with us, understood our process, and came from the community and led organizations in the community. One of those 4 we just hired as a staff member. So after 3 years as a grantee and then 3 years on the board, she let me know, Linda Prieto is her name. She's absolutely fabulous, that she was going to be leaving the nonprofit she was at and asked me to be a reference and kind of help her find a new job, I thought for a second and I said, "Oh my goodness, would you
I
consider
found you
coming
one.
here?" Exactly. I know you're a search firm leader, so it worked out great. We actually didn't have a position or anything, but just realized an opportunity to have somebody we knew and respected so much who had been a grantee for 3 years and then a board member for 3 years. This wasn't going to happen again. And so 6 months ago, she joined, and it's just been phenomenal to have her on board. And it's just the next level of us institutionalizing community voice on both our staff and our board. So it just makes us a much stronger organization because with everything happening in the world right now, we don't need to bring in outside experts to our staff and board to teach us about what is happening on the ground. We actually have people with their own lived experience who have run organizations directly impacted by all the changes we're seeing in society today who can give us that directly. And again, it's made us a much, much stronger organization.
I think what you should be doing is giving coaching to other companies and organizations about what's happening on the ground in town or any town for that matter, because very often we're in our bubbles and we don't know, what's really happening. And I was going to ask you, you kind of answered there, what success stories are there of nonprofits and others that have moved up and then they come in to help out and to be involved or even to donate or whatever. I would assume there's some of that.
There is. So, we have many of our nonprofits have, we really try to invest in nonprofits at a time where they can leverage our support in the best way possible. So, we're kind of looking in the Goldilocks zone. If an organization is already doing terrifically and, they don't really need us, if it's just an idea, they're too early. So, we're really looking for someone who has an idea, has some traction, but that bringing in SV2, not only our funds, but everything else we bring to the table can make a difference. And we have many examples of that. But to your point, what we really love is that we stay connected to these organizations for very long periods of time.
Yeah.
Now, four of them are serving on our board in governance, deciding, our budget every year, which is really terrific. And even more than that, a lot of the SV2 folks staying involved for a long, long time after the 3-year grant from SV2. We recently had a panel of four of our former grantees, some from 15, 20 years ago, and we didn't plan it this way, but 3 of the 4 still had SV2 folks on their board and actually as their board chairs, even many, many years after we had stopped, our official relationship with them. So we really try to have deep impact for a very long time. And all that is based on trust. I know you know this from your work, that we really just try to develop deep, trusting relationships with our grantees, with our impact investees, and with our donor partners. And so that it goes beyond just the formal relationship that we have, and we help them we help each other in all kinds of ways for many, many, many years.
You could even call that community, you know?
It is very much a community. Since you mentioned that word, I'll say that is really one of the key things about what SV2 is that I think is a huge value add in these times. So many people right now are feeling isolated and feeling helpless and feeling hopeless. So coming together in community to have a positive social impact. Now, we can't affect every crazy headline we're seeing every day in the news, but in our sphere of influence, which is not insignificant, we are having a positive impact in these areas that we are involved in, and people are coming together to do it with values aligned, like-minded folks. And that gives folks hope to do other things, both at SV2 and beyond. And I think, again, we want to counter the feeling of isolation and helplessness that is out there. And that feeling of community is so important. And I really feel also people are really loving in-person events right now where you actually are getting together in person, connecting, and doing something positive, whether it's figuring out which amazing nonprofit to support or figuring out which amazing impact investee to support. Or we also go on these immersive learning trips, Mark, that I should mention. Every year we do a trip. In 22 and 23, we went to the South, to Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama to visit civil rights sites and meet with local advocates. In 24, and again next month here in 25, we're doing a trip to the Central Valley of California, meeting with farm workers and advocates, learning about water issues, immigration issues, economic inclusion issues. This gets back to what I was saying earlier about really getting proximate to the communities that we want to support and really learning in a humble way. And it just makes an enormous difference. And there's a real feeling of community we feel with the folks we're meeting with who are so trusting to let us in essentially to their homes, into their communities. We try to do that in an extremely humbly way. We compensate them for their time, and we learn a ton together by the dialogue and conversations we have.
So when you're running for president?
Not for me. I'm very, very happy where I am right now.
No, but no, yeah, I guess my point is, it all is about who's on the ground and community at the end of the day to stick, to make it really stick and everything. So fantastic stuff that you're doing, and I can tell you love it, which is makes it not a job at the same time too. So, well, I want to ask you one last question. We always say and you'll know this, we always say here in LA, leave them wanting more so we can do a sequel. So we're gonna have to figure out that. But last question here is, and I'll start by this. A client told me in 2021, he was talking about the pandemic year. He said, Mark, that was the year that flew by slowly. And it really hit home when he said that. And even now, where people, I know they feel like COVID was yesterday and years ago, all at the same time in a crazy way. And now we're already at the end of 2025 pretty well, and it goes fast. With all that said, what are you most grateful for, and what are you most hopeful for?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah. Well, I'm very grateful for personally, for my family and friends and where I am in life, and then for the SV2 community. I get to spend all day talking to our donor partners, our grantee partners, our investee partners, or people who are interested in potentially joining SV2. These are folks who want to give back. They want to do something positive. And they're looking for the best way to do it. That's the best fit for them. And so to be able to be that connector gives me great satisfaction, and I'm really grateful to be in a position where we can do that, where we're both helping people bring more meaning to their lives, and we're supporting great nonprofits that are doing terrific work. So it's
Yeah.
really a win-win for everybody. So I'm very grateful to be part of that, and that also is really what I'm hopeful for. Obviously these are incredibly difficult times in many different ways, but things change, and I really feel like the seeds of some amazing things are being planted now that we're going to see bloom in the medium and long term.
Yeah, and it's great for donors and investors, et cetera, to see specific things happening, versus sometimes just giving money and hope it works out type of deal. So I think that goes back to community again. And if you can have, organizations like yourself in a million communities across the country doing the same, the impact will absolutely be felt. So congrats on that. And I'm grateful. Well, I'm grateful I have a new friend. That's a good way to start. I'm also grateful that you are a leader who cares. And like you said, I'm probably hopeful for the same thing, that you are that and making a difference. So great job, man. And thanks for being on the Leaders Who Care series.
Yeah, thanks a lot for having me, Mark. This has been terrific.
And you should have gone into broadcasting. That could have been an option also. Got the voice for it. So way to go.